Welcome to The Great American Epic, where we discuss The Walking Dead. As before, we'll pick up from where we were last time. This is part 4 of the lecture Rick and the Spiritual Climax. I will start here with a new quotation. Quote, "My mercy prevails over my wrath." It's not from the Bible, but the Quran. It's what Rick says at the end of Season 8, at the end of a long war with the Saviors, after sparing, incredibly sparing, the life of Negan. Quote, "Save him," he tells the group. That spiritually loaded word, save his life, and perhaps, let's see, save his soul. This, to the surprise and horror of some, especially Maggie, Glenn's widow. How does Rick, who has told Negan repeatedly, with momentous resolve and bravery, quote, "I'm going to kill you. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but nothing is going to change that," end up telling those he leads to save this arch enemy's life? The story is not so long to recap, and it completes Rick's arc for the time being, the spiritual quest he is on, which is also ultimately a political quest. And as I have stressed, understanding this quest, particularly its spiritual dimensions, is crucial to getting one's hermeneutic bearings in The Walking Dead. If we can understand the arc of the principal hero, we have all the key we need to understanding much of the whole of the epic, from Rick's beginnings all the way to the finale, by which point Rick, apart from a coda, is only a presence in legacy. I want to pick up with Rick in the days after he is shaken into submission to Negan by Negan's overwhelming terror and absolute power, asserted precisely at the point at which Rick has reached the height of arrogance, of conscience absence, of poor leadership, and of guilt. To keep things brief, I will list here in bullet point fashion the stages of Rick's character's development into a conscience-checked, politically valiant, and spiritually transcendent leader. I won't cover everything, but I'll hit the highlights. 1. Rick determines, in agreement with others in his group, that continued submission to Negan's way of ruling is unacceptable, and resolves to mount a resistance to Negan's imperial domination. 2. Rick's understanding of the justification for rebellion against Negan's authority evolves, taking on, in essence, a natural rights philosophy that harkens back to John Locke and, of course, to America's claims to justification of a war of independence against British colonialism. Rick asserts that the, quote, world, it would be ridiculous to say nation or country in this setting, belongs to his group, quote, by right, for no other reason than that they believe in and are committed to, quote, fairness and, quote, finding common ground. 3. Rick realizes and embraces the fact that although he believes it's essential that Negan dies, this is not, quote, about him. It's not, that is, any personal vendetta. It's about something bigger than Rick and Negan. This is in stark contrast to the way Negan lords over his community of saviors, whom he requires to, some might say has brainwashed to, say that they are Negan, that all of them must identify as, quote, Negan, They don't have any personhood per se, except vicariously through their fealty to Negan's power over them. Which does entail, on Negan's part, a philosophy, Hobbesian, but deep down is rooted in narcissism and force. 4. In the course of the war, everybody is affected. Season 8 includes several montages of close-ups on the faces of individual characters to emphasize the toll that the war, which hardly ever goes as planned, takes on all of them in unique and eroding ways. The epic is keen not to glorify war, quite the opposite, but that is not my focus at this particular moment. Rick, of course, is affected too by the course of the war, and while not losing his Lockean principles, does put them on the back burner, leaving virtually all acts of violence and deception on the table, whatever it takes to win. His last terrible deed in this modus operandi is to give his word to a group of saviors who, in exchange for their offer of surrender, he will allow to join his community. They are ingenuous, but Rick is not, and he and Morgan murder them post-haste after Rick gave them his word in utter deception. 5. Rick's son, Carl, is bitten by a walker and dies, but not before expressing his belief in the form of a credible plea that, quote, this has to stop, meaning the war and the incessant antagonism between Negan and Rick. Carl's death, of course, affects Rick profoundly. How did Carl die? Not due to warfare, but in the process of helping someone, extending hospitality, accepting risk. While others are consumed by various machinations to win the war, Carl sneaks away to aid Sadiq, a lone traveler in need of food and shelter. Sadiq tells Carl about how his mother, recently deceased, believed that the souls of persons were, quote, trapped in the bodies of the zombies. So Sadiq takes it upon himself, when possible, to put down zombies to honor his mother's belief and free the people's souls. Some zombies attack Sadiq and Carl, and instead of fleeing, Carl insists that they fight in order to share in Sadiq's project of honoring his mother's faith, perhaps because at this moment, tragically, he feels he has no father figure worth honor anymore. It's in the process of honoring Sadiq's mother that Carl is bitten. I want to note here in passing, before continuing to chart Rick's character evolution, that word, quote, trapped. We recall, heard it before at the meeting in which Rick campaigned to recruit his group's support for undertaking the mercenary killing of the men in their sleep at the satellite outpost, the initial unconscionable atrocity that would ultimately lead to war. At that point in the epic, Morgan, committed to the belief that everyone can, quote, come back, and killing should be avoided whenever possible, stands up, the lone person to express an alternative point of view to Rick's. What word did Morgan use? He said, quote, we aren't trapped in this. Nobody's trapped. By the time Carl is bitten in the woods, everybody is trapped in the war. Particularly, Negan and Rick seem trapped in a confrontation that cannot end without one or the other's death. So it's not coincidence on the storyteller's and poet's part that what Sadiq's mother believed in, and the word that she used for it, was untrapping souls. And to make a very long epic short, two fundamental events will happen on a spiritual level in The Walking Dead. One, Rick's soul will be untrapped at the end of season 8. And two, Negan's soul will, believe it or not, be untrapped by series end. I am only about halfway through my recap of Rick's character's trajectory towards the spiritual climax. But I will stop here for now, and we will pick up with this next time.